Hey there guys, welcome to today's live stream. We're going to be talking all about the different types of cardio you can do, 5 types of cardio that you can do if you've got back pain, or talking about when you should be doing them, how we should be doing them, and really getting into all the details on that. So hopefully you guys are going to find it really helpful, really interesting. And if you're new to the channel, please do consider subscribing to the channel. We do these live streams every single weekday, and at the end of the live streams, today being no different, we go live, or we do live Q&A. So hopefully that's your opportunity to ask us some questions. If you do have any, post those in the comments below, because Lara's the other side of the camera. She'll be able to answer those or read those out, and we can get some answers for you guys. With that being said, let's get into today's live stream. So guys, we're going to get into these sort of cardio bits and pieces today. Hopefully you're going to find them really helpful. And cardio is something that people want to sort of get into. They want a way of working out to work on fitness, work on health, work on the cardiovascular system. And all too often, we get into the wrong things. So we want to use this as an opportunity to give you guys 5 different forms of cardio that people regularly mention, and what the pros and cons of those are, why you should maybe lean away from some of these and towards others, and when the right time to get into others are, which you may not have considered. So we've got the 5 types: walking, cycling, running, rowing, and the cross trainer. And if you've watched any of our other live streams before, we have touched on these in the past, but maybe not in the same detail. So I'm going to go through each one as we go down. We're going to try and be proactive and helpful. I know that some people, for example, cycling, they enjoy cycling. So we want to make you aware of the weaknesses with that particular mode. But you know, at the end of the day, if you do enjoy it, there is something to be said for that. So maybe we can make some suggestions in today's live that will offset some of the bad that is being done while you're doing some of these particular exercises. But if you are in a position where you're struggling with your back and you're trying to get it better, I definitely lean towards a few of these over the others. So that's really important for you guys to bear in mind. So first and foremost, we've got walking. This is really the go-to one for more or less everybody. It's an ability for our body to get a little bit of movement through it in a weight-bearing position, in an upright position. We want to be walking with a good posture, head over the shoulders, over the hips, over the feet. We don't want to be stooping forwards or arching backwards unnecessarily. That is really important. And this allows us, all too often when we've got severe back pain and muscle spasm, we tend to shy away from doing any sort of physical activity, any walking or anything like that. And actually getting a little bit of walking done, even if it's just around the house, leaning on some of the surfaces that you might have, it can make a big difference to getting rid of some of that excess inflammation. Because as we mentioned in previous lives, talking about back pain, it's when inflammation builds up in those little holes that we start to get that pain, that discomfort. And sometimes it's really serious pain or sciatica. And a little bit of movement can help our body flush away some of that excess inflammation. So no matter what stage you're in, getting up and just moving around a little bit is always going to be a helpful option. Now, there's some things you can use to make it more helpful, especially if we're talking about getting out of the house and doing a little bit of a walk. I've been speaking to a number of people on the live streams as well as in the Back in Shape membership group. A few people have suggested or used these, and that's the poles, the walking poles. Those can really help you stay upright and also get a little bit of support whilst you are feeding in maybe this level of cardiovascular activity to your general rehab process. Because ultimately, if we're not fit, we're going to struggle with the cardiovascular side of things to actually do our workout in the first place. So that's a really good option. A little bit of support, and those walking poles can be helpful and are helpful for many. The second one is when you're feeding in a new walking exercise, or you're starting walking out of the house maybe for the first time in a while, or you're looking to step it up. Consider making improvements or increasing the intensity by doing a flat route versus a hilly route. Now, there's pros and cons with both. When we're going uphill, we're going to be leaning forwards, and that often in the short term actually relieves a little bit of pain because it makes the holes larger. But after maybe a few minutes or even sometimes a few steps, you're going to find that actually because it's putting so much more pressure on the discs on the front of the vertebra, that can be an aggravating factor. It's something we generally advise people to steer clear of. Conversely, going down the hill can sometimes be uncomfortable because we have to lean back for counterbalance, and it can load the facet joints. And also, therefore, as we're loading the facet joints on the back of the vertebra, it closes that hole, so can again make things a little bit worse. And if we have certain things like more severe disc degeneration where the facets are going to be touching as well, and we've got things like spondylolisthesis or other issues, then that downhill walking can also be equally challenging. So that we want to be mindful of avoiding those sorts of hilly routes in the early stages of back pain rehab, what we would classify as sort of the phase 1 and the phase 2 stages. But as we get into phase 3 and our body is an awful lot stronger than it was, we can start to feed in some of these things, but we should always go with the treat principle, and I will touch on that again just as a refresh. We've mentioned it a number of times recently, but we'll touch on that a little bit later in the live. Next we get on to cycling. So cycling is a big one. It gets commented on quite a lot, and I want to start off by saying, what type of bike are we using? Are we using a spin bike? Are we using a road bike? So very similar there. Or are we using something that's a little bit more upright? Maybe it's like the Boris bikes in London, where they're rather upright. Or are we talking about a stationary leaning back bike? Those ones that are sort of, you're sat almost in a chair and doing the cycling. Now, my biggest gripe with, well, the two big gripes with cycling is you're sat down, number one. And if you're doing the first two, the spin bike or the racing bike, etc., then you're going to be leaning in a very, very flexed position, a forward bending position. And although we have the support on our arms, so we're not necessarily loading through the spine as much on the spin bike and the road bike, we are in a position of extreme flexion. And many people that do the road cycling will do 50, 100 miles at a time or kilometers at a time. And that takes, it's maybe a 2, 3, 4 hour cycle on the weekend on a lovely day like it is today. The problem with that is we're leaning forwards for such an extended period of time, and the stretch that puts through the ligaments is counterproductive when we're trying to get everything back there to restore back to its normal lordotic position. So there are a few suggestions that I'll make in a moment with that, but I really would encourage you, if you are a keen cyclist, please try and take on board some of these principles that I talk about later and try and put it off a little bit if you can until you're further along with your rehab process. Bikes that are sort of semi-recumbent, sitting back, or upright bikes, from the semi-recumbent bike point of view, if you're just sat inside using it, I'm not a big fan of those because it's just not practical in terms of the way in which we use our body. We want to get you guys moving in an upright position, able to locomote and move around the place. So I really would prioritize walking over the bike in that particular position. So that's, and it's sitting, more sitting. We don't need more sitting on a daily basis. If it's an upright bike and you like just maybe riding along the promenade or something like that, just for enjoyment, get out in the fresh air for 20 minutes or so, then that is a little bit different, and that I'd say is more acceptable. You're doing that purely for enjoyment. We're not doing it for hours on end. And therefore, if we can take these little tips on board that I'm going to go through in a moment, then we can make cycling a little bit more effective for us, or a little bit less detrimental for us when we're talking about recovering from back pain. So 2 main tips. Number 1, get the handlebars higher and the seat slightly lower, so we're more in an upright position. It's easier to maintain that lordosis unless we have very, very, very flexible hips, and we've really worked hard at that. We're not going to have the hip flexibility to keep our spine straight in a normal setup on the bike. So that's number 1. Number 2 is going to be, as soon as you've finished on that bike, get on the towel. All of you will know the towel exercise that we recommend all the time. It's in the backinshapeapp.com website, so you can check it out over there. But that towel exercise is imperative that you do after you finish your cycle, because it's just going to allow you to oppose that forward bending motion that your spine will have been under for an extended period, whether it's 15-20 minutes of a nice little cycle to maybe a coffee shop, or whether it is a 2, 3, 4 hour cycle. And on this final note, for those sort of cycle enthusiasts that do like those longer trips, if you stop at traffic lights, if you're stopping at any points, please just try and get up and get yourself upright again if possible. That's a really, really important one. And as I said, get on the towel at the end of the session, because it's just trying to stop the sustained ligamentous stretch, which is my concern when we're talking about those road cycle enthusiasts that are doing those long rides. It's this sustained stretch through the posterior lumbar ligaments and tendons, etc., that I don't particularly like. And if we can find a way to disrupt that sustained stretch by getting upright, that's going to be really helpful and much to your benefit, and it'll mean that you can still do the cycling for enjoyment whilst taking a few small simple steps to make it slightly less detrimental for your lumbar and thoracic spine. So that's the topic of cycling. Next we have rowing. Now, rowing on the surface of it is one that's suggested by people. People ask, oh, can I do some rowing? Because, it's building my back muscles, I'm using my back. And that's fine, but there's so many other ways. We've already discussed walking being good. We'll get onto some more further down. I really would suggest you do the walking or the cross train, as we'll get into later, because the rowing even with the best will in the world, if we're doing it well and we're pivoting from the hips only, we're still sat down for long periods, and that reaching as we go forwards causes us to collapse over. So all we're doing for 500 meters, 1,000 meters is going squash, 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 squash on our discs. And it's just the advantages of doing that versus disadvantages just kind of don't really stack up. So we want to get a effective evaluation of what am I doing here and why am I doing it. I always say, really with cycling and with rowing, unless you want to compete in the Cambridge boat race or you're going to have a yellow jersey on the Tour de France, there's not much point in progressing with these sorts of cardiovascular exercises for the sake of cardio. There's many other ways we can do cardio that are more safe and more effective for the spine, unless you have a particular enthusiasm for these particular sports. So just bear that in mind. With rowing, a few little tips you can do is, again, we use the towel straight afterwards, but bend at the hips only. We only pivot from the hips. We stick our bum out as we come forwards, and we reach and we maintain a lordotic spine. So we, instead of bending from the spine, we've got the hips here and we're going like that, forwards and backwards. Then yes, we could argue actually that's going to be a good bit, a good bit of workout on hip extension, and would be acceptable. But we have to be really clear with our flexibility, etc. So that's the take on rowing. When we get down to running, I think actually I'll cover running last because there's a little bit of a chat about the running side of things. But we'll go on to cross trainer or the elliptical, and this is the machine in the gym. So if you're considering the leaning back bike or you're considering the rowing, then the cross trainer would kind of be in that group. It's the gym equipment, going in there and using the cardio equipment. And I would always encourage you to move towards the cross trainer or the elliptical, different names for essentially the same thing. This is the machine that has the big handlebars that move like so, and they normally have a heart rate monitor in the middle where the handlebars are static. Use the static handlebars. If you're doing that at the same time, you're going to feel like you're being shaken from both ends, and sometimes that's just not a pleasant experience. So we don't want that. Why do I like the cross trainer? Well, there's two big reasons. Number one is you're upright. So we're able to do exercises upright. And number two, it's very, very low impact. So much like walking, we have that upright but small amount of wiggling through the spine, which helps us just keep movement through there and helps that area drain. On a slight tangent, we've mentioned before that one of the reasons that the lower back flares up overnight in many cases and feels particularly bad in the morning is because it doesn't have a very good drainage mechanism when we're not moving. So inflammation and excess fluid generally just swells up in that area. And those little bits of movement when we're upright, walking or on the cross trainer, allow us to just get the drainage going and get rid of some of that waste and build up of fluid and inflammatory products in that lower back. And because it's a small amount of movement on the cross trainer, you're going to find it's a lot easier on your lower back because there's less impact, less compression. The second benefit of the cross trainer is that you're able to really whack up the intensity. So from a cardiovascular point of view, you might find that walking, I'm not quite there. I'm not quite able to actually, really work up a sweat unless I'm walking for a very, very long period of time. Whereas the cross trainer does allow you, if you're short on time, to be able to do a 20-minute blast in a way that's not really going to stress your spine out in terms of any injuries, but is going to be a really good biomechanical position to be in terms of upright and working the cardio. So that's a really good one. And you can really work as hard or as easy as you want on the cross trainer. It's very, very flexible. So it can really allow someone to work on their fitness really well, or just introduce a little bit of cardio in a safe and effective way. Just get on the machine and off the machine in a careful manner. That brings us back to running. Running is the last one, and we don't really talk about running a lot in the early stages of recovery in phase 1, phase 2, or even the early parts of phase 3, because it is an impact sport. And the problem with running is that if we're running too slowly, then there's a lot more up and down motion, and that creates a lot of impact in the spine. And there's all sorts of other issues with running that can make it a more challenging exercise for someone with back pain. Do we lean forwards too far? Do we lean backwards too far when we're running in our personal technique? And we can maybe get into this in future live streams, to dissect this a little bit more. But running is generally a good thing to work towards for many people. The reactions in our body from that impact, the controlled impact when we're running quickly with good form, is going to help us strengthen the discs, strengthen the bones, etc. But it is something for much further on in the recovery process. And what we do suggest with running is, if you enjoy doing that sort of activity, then slowly start to feed it in. Try and run relatively quickly in shorter distances rather than go, I feel like giving running a go. I'm going to do there are these things where it's like couch to 5K or those sorts of things. Please try and avoid those as best you can. pick a speed, so something that's relatively quick. And this is why also I like the cross training, because if you're sensible around this particular aspect, the cardio aspect, you can use the cross trainer very effectively to build up your general fitness. So when you then incorporate running into your fitness regime, the running itself, you're able to run faster for a longer period because you've built up a baseline of fitness on the cross trainer in a safe and effective way. So we can run at that 8 or 9 minute mile speed for a longer period of time. Maybe you can only do 500 meters, but you can run at that slightly faster speed for a longer period of time rather than plodding at 15-minute miles or very, very slow, because those are just going to give your back a little bit of trouble. So running does have many great adaptive changes, and there is some good research. I remember from a little while ago we did a topic on running about long-term runners, and I'm talking about years of running, not 6 months or anything like that, but actually getting more collagen laid down in the discs, getting stronger load-bearing structures as a result of the adaptive change that running gives. That's not for you right now in the phase 1, 2, and 3 of back in shape. You're not going to get that change in that time frame, but it's something worth bearing in mind. So if you are keen on running, let's build it in slowly at the right time, and that way we can get into an activity that actually can provide a good degree of benefit if it's done correctly. If you do running badly, you're going to create problems for yourself. You're going to make things worse in the knees, hips, ankles, and lower back. So we have to make sure we're doing it correctly in a sensible manner. And I would always suggest to a lot of people, get on that cross trainer first, build up your basic level of fitness, and once we've got an acceptable level of fitness, then we can consider things like the running. So that's pretty much it on the cardio for today's live stream. I can see Laura laughing at a few of the comments that are coming through, or smiling at a few of the comments. So if we get to the Q&A, that'd be great.
Good morning, everybody. Right, yes, we will get straight into the questions. We actually missed out swimming on the board, and Jeannie pointed that out. So can you please give us some advice on swimming?
I think if I touch on swimming now, because I actually think I had a call with someone about swimming recently. Anyway, so swimming, that is a really good one. I personally used to do a lot of swimming when I was younger, so it's something that I know a good degree about. The big thing about swimming, and I'm going to incorporate aqua aerobics in here because I know a lot of people like that sort of thing as well. Being in the pool is great for your ability to move around. We can do activities in a lower gravity environment, and therefore we can get better movement and mobility through our joints, and we can do a bit of cardio by way of swimming. But in terms of doing swimming properly, tumble turns and that sort of thing, not advised if you've got back pain. So bear that in mind. The big issue with swimming is that we need load. Because our body is reacting to the stress of gravity putting pressure on our structure on a daily basis, and that's how we get stronger. So if we're only doing swimming as our primary and only method of rehab, because sometimes people will do that, I'm sure many of you in the back in shape would not do this, but it's worth covering nonetheless. Many people will just say, oh, well, I love macro aerobics, it really feels good, and and using a pool-based activity as your primary form of rehabilitation is not advisable. And my opinion on that is because you're not getting the gravity. We do need a degree of gravity. As I've mentioned with the running last thing, it is that impact controlled in a good way that actually triggers changes in our body, adaptation in our body. The bones get stronger, we get more collagen laid down in certain joints, etc. So we improve the overall durability and ability of our body to weight bear. That only happens when we have more weight on us. The same issue you find with astronauts when they come back to the UK, or come back to the planet, not necessarily the UK, it might be somewhere else. When they come back down to the planet from the space station, they have to do a period of intensive rehabilitation to actually build themselves back up, because their body adapts to the loss of stimulation. So if our primary mechanism for working out is only in the pool, then we do need to consider some land-based exercises that are actually going to build up strength and stability. And that's the sort of exercises that we talk about in the back in shape phase 2 and phase 3. So bear in mind, swimming is okay, it's good. You can get a good workout and certain benefits from that swimming, but it shouldn't be the only thing you're doing. And also just bear in mind, if you are in sort of what we call phase 1, or slowly transitioning into phase 2, and we're still in a bit of, we're still a bit vulnerable in the back, then the one issue I do have with swimming in a pool is that the process of you getting undressed and dressed afterwards, putting on that swimming costume that's a little bit tight, etc. It's a lot of bending and twisting right before and right after we're going to do some activity. So there are those risks involved. I know I was speaking to a lady more recently, and actually in the last couple of months, and she lived by the sea, so she just walk into the sea and walk back out again. Well, there's no issues there, and if you're walking back to your house, then that's perfectly fine. There's not going to be those risks there. But that's pretty much my take on swimming in particular, or acro aerobics, stuff in the pool.
Okay, awesome. Mandy has said here, after my fusion, they recommended swimming only. Yeah. She also asked earlier on, how long do we walk for, and how often do we do it when we first start walking?
So there is a certain degree of trial and error to this. I'd normally say, give a 15-minute walk a go. And see how you go. What you will do, this is a necessary thing, so bear in mind, after you've done any of these cardiovascular activities, I would always suggest you get on the towel and get a bit of ice on, especially if it's the first time you've done it. Like anything, we have to test the boundaries. We have to see where we're at, and we want to do this in a responsible manner. So maybe we're doing a small circuit around home. Maybe we do a 10-minute walk. We see how we are. We use that treat principle. There's no right or wrong time. It's just finding out what's right or wrong for you. Some of you watching this will be able to do a 3-minute walk, and then it's trouble. Others of you will do 10 minutes before things start kicking in. Others will be able to do an hour or so, and then you find that it's a little bit too much the next day. We do that treat principle, that test, rest for the rest of the day, evaluate in the context of our symptoms and the context of the daily pattern, and then adjust if necessary. So maybe it was too much, maybe it wasn't enough walking, and then we can test again in the future. So remember that principle, but it might be 10 minutes, it might be 15 minutes. Don't be alarmed if you did 20 minutes and actually you were okay, then you did 30 and you were sore the next day. If that's the case, then you know now, look, okay, it was a bit too much, so we'll just back off a little bit and we'll sit at 20. And we'll sit at 20 for a week, and then we'll maybe do 2 20s in one day, morning and maybe later in the day, and maybe do that a couple of times, and then we'll try that 30-minute walk. And it's just being proactive, a little bit over the top analytical about these sorts of things. But if you're in the sort of the Back in Shape membership group, then just ping us in a comment in the Facebook group and say, look, I just did a 15-minute walk, what do you think I should do? And that way we can tailor things a little bit more to you guys and give you a bit more advice. But that's the general principles. Test something, evaluate it, and then go on from there.
Okay, brilliant. Alex Sparks has said about walking using poles. She said, I've actually come away from them. I found that unless they're really tall, virtually shoulder height, they tend to make me stoop over and strain the back. I do use them, but for balance mainly, but I think beware. It's a good point. Yeah,
we want to make sure the height is right. We see, unfortunately, people coming into the clinic with crutches or with walking sticks as aids when they first come in, and quite often people have them too low, so they're actually leaning over onto the thing, and the amount of times that I have to take the thing off them and stretch it out so they're more upright again is a big thing. So thanks for mentioning that, Alex. It's a big one. We want to make sure they're the right height. We want to make sure you're not stooping over. So a bit of personal evaluation, like Alex has done, is going to be really important, and that way you can just make sure they're the right height for you.
Awesome. Nyla has asked here, can I ask about my workout? After workout, I've got back pain. Thanks. I did ask her what sort of exercises is she doing during her workout, but if that is the case for somebody, so what would you recommend?
If we're doing like a workout, I'm going to assume that might be like a gym workout or something like that. It's not necessarily that bad if you do have a bit of back discomfort. It's what scale is it? And this sometimes does require a little bit more of a conversation.
Pain, so I'm thinking
I'd probably suggest if you're getting it regularly, you need to look at what exercises you're doing, how you're doing them. But also, it might be a case of, let's get on the towel straight afterwards. Before I leave the gym, I'll get on the towel, take a towel in. You finish your workout, you get on the towel, you get up. How are you 20, 30 minutes later? If everything's fine again, then I'd probably say, hey, are we doing the workout wrong? Are we lifting wrong? A lot of people we see in the gym, their technique's not necessarily so great, and they've got some dodgy movement patterns which are putting unnecessary stress on the back. Is it that sort of aching pain in the back where everything's kind of throbbing? Or is it like a really tight feeling where the muscles are just full of blood and just restricted? That sort of pump. Well, that's okay, that second one. But there might be an indication that things not so good. So do the towel, do a bit of icing, see how that adjusts things, and maybe get someone to just check your form, because it might be that there's a few technical issues there, especially if we're doing things like deadlifts or squats. We want to be mindful of that. If you're doing other things, then you need to talk about that in a little bit more detail, I think.
And just in case Nyla's not on the Back in Shape
if you're not in the Back in Shape and you're finding that the back pain is getting worse, then definitely get into the Back in Shape membership site, backinshapeapp.com. The reason I suggest that is because quite often it's not necessarily the exercises that you're doing, it's other practices. For example, a big one is people will be in the gym, they'll do their workout, then they'll sit down and play on their phone. Sit down and flex. So you've done a completely normal exercise with a nice neutral spine. Maybe you've done your squats or your deadlifts, or you've done some lunges, or you've just done bench press, for example. But then you go and sit on your phone, leaning forward, squashing on that disc. And that's a big one. I really do discourage people from once between sessions, don't just sit down and lean forwards on your phone, because that is what's giving you trouble. And that's why in the Back in Shape we have those educational units where we're just talking about various principles that you guys need to be aware of so you can stop doing them. And the amount of times that many of you watching this will have seen other people saying, hey, I was doing all of those wrong things. Maybe it's even you watching this right now and you've seen some of the Back in Shape stuff. You say, oh, I was doing all of these wrong practices. It's astounding how many of these I was doing that I should not be doing. So sometimes the information is actually more helpful than the exercises in the short term.
Okay, brilliant. And Nyla, yes, free to join, and that is backinshapeapp.com, the web page. Okay, brilliant. Questions about some treadmill running. Is it better to run on the treadmill or outside for recovery?
So I fed in treadmill running to start with, and the reason I did that is I know how fast I want to be able to run, and that's generally around about 10 kilometers an hour. You may really struggle with this, so there is a bit of if you can't really run that fast, I'd suggest maybe we need to just do the cross training to start with. If you don't have the fitness or the technique, we need to be light on our feet. We need to be taking short, fast steps. We'll probably come up with a little bit more direct guidance on running and the mechanics of running. But I think running on the treadmill ensures that you are not going to be plodding along. You're doing the 10 minutes and you can do it for you're doing the 10 kilometers an hour and you can maybe only do it for 30 seconds. Well, that's you done. You don't just go and put it down to 5 kilometers an hour and carry on plodding for 20 minutes. You do the 5 minutes, and that's where you're at right now. And with time, you'll be able to get a little bit faster, but we need to be focusing on some of those principles of running well as well, which we haven't really unpacked that much, in here, because it's a little bit more further on in the Back in Shape sort of process, if you will. But I do think treadmill running is quite good, and then you can then start to transmit that to outside. It works quite well.
And I think the last question Ollie has asked, is there a difference between the impact on a curved treadmill versus a flat treadmill?
Having run on the curved treadmills, I think the main thing with those is that you can drive them yourself.
I think they are very difficult.
They are. The good thing about those curved treadmills, so they're like it's like this sort of shape, and you basically run on them at your speed. You can adjust the resistance, but you drive the treadmill. Is that it is draining up here, and it's so draining up here, having to run properly on the thing at a consistent pace, that you kind of almost don't feel how tired you are because you're focusing so much on running on them. They are good for sort of sprint work. They're really good for sort of athletic performance. I find I wouldn't really recommend many of the guys that are in Back in Shape. I wouldn't really recommend you guys worry about that too much unless you're well on and you're doing great and you're looking for something more. But that's really not. I don't think many of you guys that are watching this should be considering those treadmills because they are just a little bit more.
They're advanced, aren't they?
Yeah.
Okay, Nyla's just come back. She said exercise for slim arms. Thank you. So maybe it's actually upper back pain that she's talking about.
So if we're doing exercises to kind of slim the arms down, that's going to be a lot of smaller dumbbells, I expect. And this is actually a really good point, because a lot of the times, not ladies doing these, but we get guys that are coming into the clinic and they maybe do 200 kilos deadlift or 150 kilo deadlift or 100 kilo deadlift, and they have no trouble, and they've injured themselves picking up the 4 kilo dumbbells and putting them back on the rack because they don't think about how they're picking them up. And a lot of ladies, when you're doing some of those lighter weights for the arms and shoulders to kind of tone things up, you're using a small dumbbell and then you're putting it down, and then you're picking it up and then you're putting it down. And because it's a light dumbbell and you're able to curl it with your arms, lifting it up isn't really much trouble. So we don't focus on the technique there. So we really need to get a bench, rest the weights on a bench, make sure we're lifting with a straight back and we're bending our knees, those sorts of things. If we're getting lower back pain as a result of that, we really need to look at how we're holding ourselves and our form. Sometimes actually, maybe you can sit down doing the workout. So maybe if we're doing the arms, we sit down in the chair, so we've got a nice straight back along the chair, or we find a wall in the gym and we actually just lean against the wall to make sure we're not swinging or moving forwards or backwards, etc. That can make a big difference. If the pain is up here in the upper back, then definitely look at your head position, because a lot of people push the head forwards, and that will be coming from your neck rather than your back per se. So I definitely look at that one. And if that is the case, then we want to get that towel exercise for the neck that we talk about, because that's going to unload it, and we want to make sure we're not doing that anymore, because that will be straining your neck and doing exactly the same as we discussed in the lower back. It's going to be squashing those discs down and putting unnecessary strain on the cervical spine, which can often give referral pain to that middle back area just around the bra strap and to the top of the shoulder blades here. as well. So we want to be mindful of those. Simple things, once you know about them, you go, oh gosh, I'm doing that, and we can stop doing it.
And lastly, even if someone is just training arms, would you still recommend keeping that core tight while they're
definitely
doing arms?
because we have a big shoulder girdle. Obviously some people have bigger shoulder girdles than other, and then we've got a small waist. In terms of the support, it's just a spine with the muscles. It's literally just a stick with a big rib cage and a big pelvis, relatively speaking. So if we're wiggling around up top, we of course have to hold more stable in the midsection. So we should have our core engaged correctly when we're doing any upper body exercises. That goes without saying, because this is such a broad structure up here compared to the thin spine that everything's balanced on. If we're not providing additional support from our core, then we're going to be wobbling our back, and that's going to be a problem there as well. So please do bear that in mind, guys. Really, really important one.
Okay, brilliant. I think that's it. Just some really nice thank yous and solid advice as ever. So brilliant. Thanks so much, everybody.
Well, thanks for the comments, everybody, and thanks for the questions. They're really helpful. And thanks for the one on swimming as well, because I did leave that one out. So apologies. 6 maybe was too many than 5, I don't know. Anyway, hopefully you found today's live stream helpful. If you are new to the channel and you're still watching, please do consider subscribing. We do these live streams every single weekday, and we do the Q&A as always at the end. That's the best bit. It keeps me on my toes. It gives us some good engagement, and you guys get to ask some really good questions that will benefit many people that are not watching at the time. So thank you very much for that. It's really, really appreciated. If you do know someone that would benefit from this live stream and you're watching it, please do consider sharing it with them on YouTube or on Facebook. We really appreciate that. With that being said, have a great afternoon. It's a nice day outside today, so hopefully you get to enjoy the afternoon as well. And we will see you tomorrow with another live stream, and I think that one is on sleeping, so we'll talk a bit about that, a big one for back pain. Have a great day, guys. Thanks so much for joining us on today's video. Hopefully you found it packed full of useful information. If you want to learn more about the premium Back in Shape membership, there's going to be a video somewhere underneath here. And if you want to stay up to date or tune into some of our more recent live streams and the Q&As at the end of those, then that's going to be down here. And remember, you can subscribe to the channel up here and hit the notification bell to make sure you know when we next go live, so you can join us for our next live stream and Q&A.